Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whatever time it is you're watching, and welcome back once again to another episode of the Harbor Trust Financial Podcast. I'm your host, Shane, joined by my co-host, as usual, Phil. Today, we are going to be talking about how expensive everything got. It's crazy. It's the new year, and everything's still expensive, and I can't afford anything, and it's super expensive. It snowed now. I got to pay for a shovel. I got to pay for a broom for the car. I got to clear the windows, a scraper for the ice, salt for the driveway. I can't add on these bills, Phil. It's wintertime, and I don't like it anymore. But you know what else is expensive? Getting sick. That's expensive. Mm-hmm. Getting sick is really expensive, too.
Yeah.
And we're here to talk about that, unfortunately. I'm not going to complain about winter today. It's a joke. I'm not complaining about winter. Complaining about how expensive it is to be sick. We're not going to complain about it. We're going to provide a solution to it. We're going to talk about that solution and anything that goes around that solution, which is
critical illness.
Critical illness insurance. And it's a lesser discussed topic. It's less mainstream as, your big old life insurance. Lesser discussed. Have you ever heard that one? Lesser? You don't think it's a word, don't you?
Maybe it's a word.
No, it is a word. I can assure you it is a word. But critical illness insurance, something that isn't discussed as much as, your typical insurances that you hear about. Life insurance is the big one. People seem to be more aware about vehicle insurance than they are about insurance that can directly benefit them. However, critical illness is usually there to help you get through the burden of critical illness. Mm-hmm. And what is it exactly, Phil?
Well, a critical illness insurance will give you a lump sum of whichever the client decide to take directly tax-free, directly to the policyholder. In case of any foreseeable of a serious illness. And we'll get into the diagnosis in a bit later. But a lump sum benefit if you develop a serious illness, and also pays out the benefits to you, the policyholder, if you are diagnosed with a critical illness. And these funds can be used for whatever way the client wants to use them, whether it's for added medical bills that the group plan does not cover, whether it's transportation, whether it's for a hospital that might not be in your local area that needs travel time, spouse to be with you, missed time work.
Yes, that's a big one there.
Yeah,
key points there, because if you get sick, in the situation that you're in a couple or you have a spouse or a loved one, mm-hmm. People have to understand that me getting sick doesn't mean that my partner also gets to have time off and receive money to have time off to be with me. And the reality is that if I get sick seriously, my partner is likely going to want to be there with me. And they're likely going to want to take care of me or accompany me through the ordeal of getting better. And that often is not possible for financial reasons. And I find that very unfortunate because there's products as critical illness is, like products like this that exist to plan for that. If you take this seriously and look at it in advance, you don't end up in that situation where finances is what's going to determine a very serious ordeal, which will definitely impact you and your family. So that being said, that's a really good point you brought up there, especially with the partner. We'll get into that later on how that's possible with critical illness. We can pay your partner, your spouse, to take care of you so they can take time off work. We'll get into those details, but key features of critical illness, obviously we discussed that it's a one-time payment that's given at the diagnosis of a critical illness, and I'm going to put a little parenthesis on at the diagnosis because there's a waiting period sometimes. We'll get into that. But it's a one-time payment that's given regardless of any other health insurance policy that you might have in place. So if you have something through work, or if you have coverage in any other regard aside from personal critical illness insurance, this doesn't factor that in. This is absolutely tailored, created, designed for an individual to insure themselves personally against the unpreventable or unforeseeable event of a critical illness. So that's one very important key feature there, and also covers several illnesses, right? Such as
cancer, heart attack, stroke, kidney failure, organ transplant, Alzheimer's disease, severe burn, MS, and the list goes on and on. Bypass surgery.
Yeah, did we mention diabetes is in there as well for certain products as well? The diagnosis of diabetes can be covered on critical illness. I know our products have some diabetes coverage. There's certain products that cover less. There's certain products that cover more. It can be blindness. There's so many things that you can go into. Brain tumor goes on and on and on. However, there's different plans that are tailored for different lists of disease coverage, which usually is discussed with the client based on what they want to have peace of mind against. If the family has dealt with several diagnoses of a similar condition, or just friends and immediate surrounding, well, maybe it's top of mind for you. So maybe look for a product that includes that specific disease or disorder or not.
The one nice feature with our products we have is any juvenile, so kids who are under the age of 18 years old, they get an extra 5 additional condition attached to their critical illness.
Correct.
So instead of, you'll see most companies, they'll have around a 25 diagnosis.
Right.
And for us, for children's or anybody who's under the age of 18, they get an extra 5, so they get 30 conditions. If ever they get diagnosed with any of those 30 conditions, that's covered as well, which is nice.
Correct, absolutely. So we talked about a waiting period. So it's at diagnosis, but be familiar with your contract if you have one, or discuss this. There's something called the survivor's period involving critical illness insurance, that it's usually a predefined duration during which you can't make any claims with your critical illness policy. The duration of time is variable. I can't really give specific examples because it does vary policy to policy, company to company, provider to provider. There's lots of different terms in which this can be involved. But just to keep in mind, I think the important point here is to be aware that it doesn't mean that I got sick today that I'm getting money today. And your family needs to be aware of that too, because if somebody gets diagnosed with a critical illness and passes away from that critical illness very immediately, we see this happen, unfortunately, a rapid decline diagnosis where somebody loses their life the week of diagnosis we've seen, so it's really unfortunate circumstances, but in which it's important to understand that your payout might not be as much as you're expecting because of that, because if there's no life insurance attached to that, well, the death is not covered through critical illness insurance, right? Death is covered through life insurance. So to be sure that you're complementing your life insurance policy with critical illness and vice versa is important, and to be aware of the payout structure and the timeline in which payouts happen is really important to understand as well. So consult your contract if you don't want to look at it yourself, just like everybody in the whole planet. Contact your advisor or reach out to an advisor if you don't have contact with your current advisor, and reach out to one that'll most certainly be happy to take a look at it with you, like ourselves.
And an example for a waiting period could be how your contract is designed, such as let's say you have, I'll give a round number, $100,000 of critical illness, and you do the surviving period would be, we're going to pay you upon your diagnosis, but you're only going to get 10% right from your diagnosis, so you're going to get $10,000, and you survive that survival period.
Right.
Some company is 10 days, some are 14 days, some are 30 days. Once you survive that waiting period of that survival period you're talking about, then the company is going to send the remaining 90% of it.
Right.
But generally is a 10% of whatever your critical illness amount is.
Right.
And then after the surviving period, it unlocks the full amount.
The full amount of.
So there's 2 ways a client can go about. They can put in a claim right away. They get the initial 10%, and then they can do another claim after the waiting period, depending how long is the waiting period. If you have a 30-day waiting period and you're strapped for money, put a claim right away. We'll pay you 10% of it. And if the waiting period for us is 14 days, you wait 14 days. you get the remaining payouts. Some people do one claim and they wait after the 14
Right,
days.
right.
There's no time limit. There is a max. Now the company might question if you put in a claim 2 years later.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, the available explanation.
Which I highly
on
doubt
what
you'll
happened.
wait 2 years anyways, but I don't see why you would.
Sometimes, you know, in my experience, I've encountered a few of them, not many, but a few of them when I went to go review some client coverage, and they're like, we had a critical, or there's something happened, but we never put in a claim. So it's just to put in a letter to the company and explaining why, and they forgot about their coverage. They never seen an advisor over the past whatever.
That does happen.
It happens, but not often. But it's just to give an example on, we do pay, or critical illness do get paid right away, but it's only a percentage, and then once you survive that waiting period, then it unlocks the rest of the remaining percentage.
Correct. And to wrap up that point on key facts about this, critical illness insurance is part of what we call living benefits insurance. You hear this term a lot, living benefits insurance. What is living benefits? It is a benefit you receive while you are alive. Life insurance, it is not a living benefit. It is life insurance. It pays out when you pass away. You're not alive. Living benefits contrary to this. So it means you'll get the payout while you're alive and undergoing treatment. So that is a bottom line. That is a bottom line standard. The waiting period and the details around that, when you claim, if you claimed, if you forgot about it, those are other details around your contract and yourself. But bottom line is, this is a product that's designed to pay you while you are alive and receiving treatment to help with the financial burden of becoming sick. Hence my brouhaha about how expensive winter is, because we just dealt with a snowstorm. Getting sick is a little bit more expensive, and I think it's a bit more important to consider living benefits insurance, specifically critical illness insurance, especially in times where it's most beneficial. Don't wait till you're already sick, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's because it doesn't really work that way.
An added feature too that your policy may have, or some policy have an option to add, is a return of premium. Okay, so
now we're speaking my lingo.
So there are policies that, or even some people that they're not key on putting their money aside towards insurance company, because they're saying, what if I never use it?
Right.
I've spent all this for nothing. The good news is they are return of premium features that you can have as a rider on your policy. So if you pay in for X amount of years and you decide to cash out the return of premium, you can.
Right.
Now, if you do so, there are some contracts, some policies that as soon as you take out the return of premium, the policy terminates.
Right.
Or the policy is paid up, and then upon your death, then the return of premium is going to be paying back to the beneficiary, so the money's never lost.
Right. It kind of becomes a life insurance in some sense, right?
Yeah, and that's to say that feature only applies if there's no claims.
Yes.
If there's a claims, that feature goes out the window, because
they'll deduct the claim if it doesn't surpass the premiums that you had, but it's
generally you'll never pay in more than
you're not going to pay in more than what you're getting paid out.
So you're going to get paid out more money on that side.
Yeah, so typically
so that's a nice little added feature.
Absolutely. And I think something that's important to note on that topic of return of premiums, I'm just going to throw this hot take out there. I'm just going to drop this bomb on the Harbor Trust Financial Podcast table right now. People are more willing to increase their vehicle insurance to get a nicer vehicle, where it is impossible to get a return of premiums, but you can't not get vehicle insurance because that's not legal. But people struggle with the idea of paying for an insurance policy for themselves, which is a fraction of the cost of what your vehicle insurance is if you're increasing it for a nicer car. They're not willing to pay that for themselves to cover their health, even if you can get a full reimbursement if you didn't use it. I'm just dropping this on the table here.
Sounds like a poor management.
Ask yourself the question if you're in that basket or not. That's all I'm saying. I didn't want. That's it. I'm just trying to help people here, right? Understand the logic behind it. But it's really important to understand these things. And return of premium options are something to discuss. I hate the idea of, well, you want me to buy this insurance that I might not use and pay for it. And if I don't use it, well, I've paid for it and I had peace of mind. Yay, but peace of mind didn't give me money back in my pocket.
Yeah.
Sickness will give me money in my pocket, and I don't want to get sick. ROP is there for that. ROP, return of premium. So discuss that with your advisor, or if your advisor is somewhat efficient at planning these policies, they will bring that up for you to make sure that you understand that you can get a reimbursement if you don't get sick.
And sometimes the ROP is the return of premium is not necessarily that much expensive.
Oh, it's not.
Sometimes it's a few dollars more, and it's so worth it.
It's so worth it
because you're going to get your money back.
Because I would lay it out this way: do you want to pay $100 a month for something that you may or may not get cash back from, or do you want to pay $110 for something that if you don't use it, you'll get every dime back in your pocket? It's a no-brainer. Yeah. So it's really important to understand that topic. So I'm glad you brought up ROP.
Yeah, return of premium, and also sometimes there's policies that you can pay in only for 10 years or 20 years, or you can have it for life as well. So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to selecting the right critical illness for certain individual.
Yeah.
And sometimes a 20-year payment, or sometimes if you want it for life, or a 10-year payment, depending where you are in the process. But for me, in my scenario, like with young kids, I've got critical illness. If I'm diagnosed, then I'll get a lump sum payout. So then financial stress off my back, because I've got that lump sum that I could be living on and focusing on getting better.
Last thing you want when you're getting better is to stress about money, because that's just going to slow your recovery down. If anything, stress does not help you get better. I can assure you. So,
no, worsen it.
If anything, worsens it. Yeah. Really good topics there on that point. We have some stats.
Yep.
That are
numbers are the numbers.
Numbers are the numbers.
These are not our numbers.
Nope. I can lie, Phil can lie, but numbers don't. So let's take a look at them. Why don't we? More than 80% of working Canadians have either suffered from a critical illness themselves or know somebody who has a critical illness. Mm-hmm. That is a huge one. It's a lot of people.
You can turn around and you don't need to look too far. Just family members. As most family members had either a heart attack, a stroke, a cancer. If not, geez, what do you guys do? But it does happen, but very rarely. We talk with people every day, and people don't need to look too far. It could be like somebody in the community as well, or it could be a close relative.
Yeah, absolutely.
But interesting fact, I don't know if it's proper to say that, but anyways, I've read once that none of the presidents of the United States, of all how many presidents has been in the United States, not one of them or their close family ever had cancer, which is which is interesting. Don't quote me on that, but I thought I read that somewhere. But which is very interesting. It's like, is there a magic?
I wonder if critical illness is part of the group plan of becoming the president of the United States. I wonder if critical illness insurance is part of it, because that's an expense they don't need, clearly. So that's a really important stat there. I like this one a lot. More than 400,000 Canadians are still living with the after effects of stroke. I don't like the fact that that's a thing. Mm-hmm. I like this stat because it highlights the importance of understanding what critical illness does. Mm-hmm. It doesn't just impact you get better, yay, we're done. It's often not the case.
Your lifestyle's going to change.
Everything's going to change, right? Mm-hmm. And your finances are going to reflect that. And being covered against this is more than ever important now, because everything's expensive. Look at winter. I'm not going to go back on that tangent, but it's important to understand that you get diagnosed with something. Yeah, finances are going to change, but that doesn't mean that you're out of the woods. Mm-hmm. It doesn't end there, and people neglect that. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to dwell on that, and I don't have to think very far in my circle of people that I know and family members, and neither do you, to identify something like a stroke. But far too many people don't prepare themselves adequately for the remaining effects of what that does, and what it does to the family, what it does to the finances. And I think critical illness insurance is a component that definitely helps in this matter, in this situation. And it's important to understand the longer lasting effects of critical illness, right?
Yep, and not even just a stroke, but a heart attack.
Correct.
Like we're not going to go back to work the very next week.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months,
it could be a year. Right.
And the other question is, if something would happen to you that way, and yes, you may have group benefits, but what's in it for you?
Right.
Are you going to be on long-term disability? Is your income going to be affected? Are you going to be losing 40% of your income? Are you well prepared? Do you have an emergency fund, or do you even have a critical illness? If you have one through your group plan, have you taken a look at it? What's covered? What's not covered? What's the waiting period? There's a lot to unpack. But going back to the statistics, is numbers are the numbers, like you're saying.
Correct. And yeah, good points on that. And the other thing, the other stat that I really like here that we have on our list, salt for the driveway is expensive. Okay, the brush for the car is expensive. It sucks. We got to buy one now. Just had a couple snowstorms. But am I ready for
He was not equipped for the first storm. This is what the information I'm gathering from him. He was not equipped. Yesterday, he had to borrow my brush. He was going to the store.
We don't have to talk about that. We're going to get back here. Come on.
I know what to get Shane for Christmas. A well-lasting brush.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And you can also buy me a critical illness insurance policy.
Yeah, sure.
For Christmas. But, am I ready? Aside from that, right, we make jokes about certain things, but am I ready for a $400 per month subscription right now? If I had somebody knock on my door and say, hey man, here's a subscription for something that really sucks, that you have to pay $400 per month. If not, things will suck forever. Well, that's the average cost per month out of pocket for Canadians involving cancer diagnosis. That's crazy. That's a huge one. The average out-of-pocket expenses for cancer in Canada is around $400 per month. And what does that mean? Well, if I get cancer tomorrow, I probably got to go somewhere to get treated, right? We're not paying for treatments on the general scale in Canada with the healthcare system that we have. Typically, expensive treatments can be covered, a lot of them not, by the way. But aside from that, well, I got to go somewhere to get treated. I might have to stay in hotels. I might have to feed myself for the time I'm there. My family members with me. What if I'm a single parent and I have kids to take care of and I get diagnosed with something, right? Like cancer's not going to pick and choose the most convenient person to target, to get diagnosed with. So understanding that there's other expenses that accrue. We don't plan a budget in the event that we get cancer. I don't know about you, Phil, but in my monthly budget for me and my household, I don't have a just in case I get cancer part of my salary that I'm expensing on that budget. Nobody does that. And we factor that in when planning for critical illness insurance coverage. We factor that in with tools as financial advisors that we have to calculate roughly what that would look like for you in your specific situation. What kind of expenses would you be taking on? But the rough estimate is $400 a month. And I ask our listeners the exact same question. If I knock on your door and I say, well, here's a $400 per month subscription that you need to pay for. You got that in your bank account right now. If I add that bill on top of everything that's going on right now, is that going to feel comfy for you? Is that going to be great? All good? Probably not, right? Critical illness insurance will bridge that gap.
And it's not just the added expenses to it, like you're mentioning, like either the gas, the hotels, or if you have to go elsewhere, food. But also, if you have a spouse, your spouse will come with you.
Coming back to that point we made earlier, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna miss work.
Yes.
Your work won't pay your spouse's income, and the spouse's income's work won't pay their income because they need to take time off. So they can't go on a disability.
You can't do
because
that
you can't use that.
no.
So we have to go on a leave, or we have to use up some vacation. Is there any more vacation that we can take, or a leave of absence, or whatever it needs to do? But they're gonna be some not only missing income on that person that got diagnosed with a critical illness, but that support person as well that's gonna accompany you and be by your side at the hospital to come with you and lose income on that side as well. So things that some people may not think of, then we do because we see it. And when we talk to people share their story with us. We talk about health, we talk about accidents, we talk about investments, we talk about all kinds of stuff. So when we get to know the client sometimes will open up and say, I got diagnosed 5 years ago with cancer. And just by asking a few questions, it's not because you were diagnosed with critical illness that you're completely out of the equation of getting a critical illness. Sometimes it's going through those qualification questions, because I tend to find in my career so far, those who were diagnosed with a cancer, a heart attack, a stroke, bypass surgery, they see the need even more because they know what they've been through.
Right.
And we can talk about it all day long, but when we know we're healthy, we're like, I don't need it because I'm healthy.
Right.
They've never been affected by it. They don't know about it. But there are some people that are proactive about it and getting some type of some critical illness insurance that way, and to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Or they know someone that went through, so they know the struggle and they don't want to go through struggle. How many people that you've heard that say, I'm going to put this in place because my father, my mother struggled. My family members struggled. We've seen somebody in the community who struggled. I don't want to struggle. I don't want to be stuck in that position and struggle financially if ever I'm diagnosed. So some people are proactive, and I encourage anybody to be proactive and to look into. I'm not saying to get one, but just see what's available for you, and if there's a plan that would work for you in your budget and in your lifestyle as well.
I like the way you put that, Phil, because the point here today isn't to twist any arms, and it is certainly not to do any convincing. This is entirely to make people aware. The number one thing, this is in my opinion, this is not anything formal, but in my opinion, the number one thing that prevents people from having adequate preparation and end up in this really crappy situation where somebody got sick, there's nothing in place, there's no funds, they can't work, they lost their income. What do? We got to do fundraisers now. We got to do GoFundMes. We got to do spaghetti suppers with the community. We got to reach out to people and hope they give us money, which, communities here in the East Coast are pretty tight knit. We like to help each other out, but it's not a good situation to be in. The number one thing that prevents people from not being in that situation is awareness. It's just knowing. It's just knowing the fact that critical illness exists. Mm-hmm. This policy, this coverage exists. Mm-hmm. It isn't this one-stop shop kind of coverage, right? You can tailor it just because you have this idea that, it's too expensive, I'm not going to look at it, I heard it's expensive. That's not true at all. Mm-hmm. I've seen critical illness coverages for less than $20 a month. Mm-hmm. I've seen them for over $500 a month. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that's yours. Mm-hmm. Right? I've also seen a Rolls Royce that was pretty expensive, and I've also driven a 2011 Corolla. It got me to where I was going. Mm-hmm. The Rolls Royce would have did the same thing. Mm-hmm. So don't paint this illusion. Don't create this non-existent barrier for yourself of not looking into this because you're just not aware of these details that we're sharing here today. Mm-hmm. I think that's really important, and I like the way that you put this. Don't necessarily go get one, but just be aware. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to put emphasis on that point because that's what we're doing here today is giving that awareness, mm-hmm. And make sure that you take that seriously. It doesn't mean go buy one. It just means look into it. Yeah. Be aware of what it does. Yeah. And then make a decision. Available. Know what's available, then make a decision. Mm-hmm. Why is it worth it?
Well, we covered a lot of points that why these are worth it, but
we'll summarize it.
Well, again, the medical expenses associated with a critical illness that are not covered by group plan or group benefits. A lot of times, like, I have that through my group plan. I have that through my group plan, and I'm not here to pick a fight with clients, but a lot of times it's not. But not only that the coverage part, there might be certain things that are covered, but what if, I'll put in that perspective, what if you have a chance to go to a certain hospital, they'll do the testing and stuff, or you can go to, let's say, the Boston hospital they're very well known for XYZ treatment, but there's going to be a lot more out-of-pocket expenses to go to that best hospital because, one, you'll have to go to the U.S., there's going to be some traveling, there's going to be maybe some flights, a lot of driving or whatever it is, or whatever hospital, okay? Would you say, nah, I'm just going to stay in New Brunswick, I'm just going to go to that hospital, which is fine, But for me, I'd rather go to the best of the best. And Ottawa is another big hospital for the heart as well. A lot of traveling there. There's a lot of good specialists in Canada that goes to that heart institute in Ottawa. So I don't want to say you have a better chance of living, but you have better specialists over there at that hospital.
Correct.
So for me, I personally would like to go there versus going to, I don't want to say my local hospital. I'm not diminishing any local hospital, but there's hospitals that are more specialized in certain things like cancer, heart, stroke, bypass surgery, and stuff like that. So I'd rather have my odds more on my side.
And typically the barrier between that and the person going to get it is finances. It's money.
Yeah.
It's money.
Yeah.
It's always money.
Yeah. And so that's number one point on that critical illness. But on the second point of the importance of having it is second opinion.
Correct.
There are a lot of critical illness policies out there and cancer policies out there that has tied with a second opinion with professionals.
Right.
So your doctor diagnosed you with that, but you're allowed to get a second opinion. I haven't seen often, but I did seen it a few times, but not a lot, that there's been a wrong diagnosis. It was not that diagnosis, it was this types of cancer diagnosis. So they didn't have to go through chemotherapy and whatnot because there was a second opinion from professionals in that industry.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. So the second opinion is very important. They get a second chance to relook at the diagnosis to see if it was the proper diagnosis. And generally this can cost money, but with a critical illness policy, it's complimentary in it.
Yeah.
So it is huge. A lot of people don't know about this up until like whenever a client of mine gets a critical illness is something I talk about, also including in that policy. There's also a second opinion. If ever there's a diagnosis of whichever it is, you're allowed to go get a second opinion. It doesn't cost you anything.
Correct.
Okay, so second opinion is very important. We talked about time off from work, loss of income. Again, to summarize that, the aftercare. Example, the PSW. Let's say your spouse needs to go back to work, or you don't have family support around where you are, and you need that little bit of help of cleaning, of maybe some meals or whatever it is. You can hire some people, but if you don't have the funds to do that, again, it could be a little more tough to do it that way, because you're not necessarily going to go back to work the very next week you're coming back from the hospital.
Of course not.
A heart attack, an example, is a lot of people can't lift more than 5 pounds. Really take it easy. They'll ask, do you have any financial support or just support at home? If not, they're going to try to do the best they can to give you that support in that community. I'm sure there's organization out there that does it, but they'll, especially when it's free, it's probably some of the basic stuff. When you get into more of that care at the house, you're looking for PSW. That PSW needs to get paid. There's government program, but again, might not be all fully funded by the government, unfortunately. So that's where the out-of-pocket expenses comes along.
Absolutely. Another thing that's really important to understand with critical illness insurance, I'm going to give you a concept about investments, because a lot of people will say, well, I'll just put that money aside, right? Or I'll just why would I pay into this insurance policy? I'll just put it aside. I want to really, really quickly go through a scenario. Let's say I had $500 per month to put aside, and I'm saying, well, of course, I'm going to put it all towards my retirement. I'm going to start working towards my retirement. And let's say for 5 years, I start putting that aside, and I make some pretty good progress. $500 a month for 5 years invested into an RSP. It can start looking like a nice, decent, important amount. What happens if I get sick at year 5? And I didn't invest into any insurance policies that cover my illness? Well, I'm going to look at the first source of significant funds that I have.
Where's my money?
Mm-hmm. It's in the RSP. What happens when I pull out the RSP? I get taxed up the woo-ha. Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to have to lose 5 years of progress that I made. I'm going to have to get taxed on the loss of progress that I just made because I got sick. How about you put $450 into your RSP a month and put $50 into your critical illness policy?
Yeah, protecting your investment.
Protect your investment. Protect your ability to progress. That's another point that's really important with critical illness. People don't frame it that way because we don't see it until we go through it. That we've seen it, we know about it.
You're gonna get double whammed.
You're gonna get double whammed, and absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, that's the reality. Be aware of this. Insurance is part of your portfolio, absolutely. If it is intelligently structured with ROP, a return of premium, like you can make this an efficient component of your investment portfolio, because the event that you get sick is not a factor that we can calculate into your portfolio. So just cover it.
Yeah, protect your
eliminate
investment.
that risk completely, or at least dispose that risk from your progress, your financial progress. So that's another point that I wanted to bring up. And the last, peace of mind. Peace of mind. I'm putting aside this much. It's coming out of my bank account directly on payday once per month. It's not enough to make me really suffer financially because I was smart with my planning and a solid advisor calculated and analyzed my situation adequately to a point where they found a policy that fits in my budget and doesn't affect me, doesn't strap me financially. I sleep good at night. I sleep well at night knowing that if I get sick, I don't really, the odds are I don't have to worry about money. I won't have to worry about it. And by no means am I anywhere near being a millionaire. Am I anywhere near having a massive six-figure net worth? You know, this is not just for the rich. This is not for the wealthy. This is for everybody who takes their finances seriously. Go get that peace of mind. It does not by any mean have to be the most expensive thing in the world for you. Talk to an advisor, reach out to an expert, and take care of that. And the peace of mind part of it is definitely, I think, a really important factor.
Yeah, because then you can concentrate on getting better versus stressing financially and trying to get better.
Absolutely.
Again, the double whammy comes in effect.
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
So it was a great episode on critical illness.
That wraps things up, I think.
And the importance of why somebody should look into and if critical illness is really important for you. And if you ask me, it is important.
It sure
to
is.
protect yourself on all basis.
Yeah.
It might be for you, it might not be for you. But like Shane mentioned, as long as the being aware and the awareness is there on your part, and you've done your due diligence to look into if this is for you or not, then you make the decision if
absolutely,
if the policy fits in your budget.
Absolutely, it has to make sense for you. It has to work in your favor. So, on that note, I think we can wrap it up here. If there's any questions or comments, as usual, leave them in the comment section. We take a close look at that very often, so we are always aware of anything that you want to add or ask. Feel free. Don't be shy to reach out. These are can be complex topics, and we want to do our best to make sure everybody understands these
and simplify them
for you. So reach out. Don't be shy. And on that note, we hope to see you on our next episode as we look at wrapping up 2024. We're going to be banging out quite a few episodes to wrap up the new year and going into January for 2025. We're probably going to be talking about some New Year's resolutions, talking about how cleaning up our finances in 2025 can be a priority. So look forward to keep an eye out for that, and we look forward to making those episodes for you. So on that note, we hope you have a great rest of your week. As usual, my name was Shane, joined by my co-host Phil today, and this was the Harvard Trust Financial Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye-bye, everybody.